Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you guys have been having a great weekend and a great evening so far and an awesome Sunday. Got you an update, and we're really just going to focus in on the tropics. This is going to become a heavier topic probably over the next, I would say, 24 to 48 hours, especially if the models begin to fold to a specific model that we're going to talk about that is very hard-headed and is really continually showing a scenario where we could definitely have the first named storm of the season, which would be Alex of the 2022 hurricane list of names. So that's really what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some in-depth things. I mentioned, if we got to the end of the weekend, that we would talk a little bit more details on this. So we're going to get a little nerdy on you guys this evening and talk about what could cause it to not form, what could cause it to be the technical worst case scenario, and what, I think may happen. So I'm going to kind of throw my own opinions into this, and then we're just going to try to figure this out. So if you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. There is a severe weather threat tomorrow. We're going to make a video specifically on that tomorrow morning so I can give you guys the updated information. So watch out, Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, severe weather expected for tomorrow. If you guys got anything that I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and more importantly, it gives a whole lot of other people an opportunity to pray over it also. And I pray over those every morning in my quiet time, and it gives me an opportunity just to get a little bit more quieter over each prayer request. So there's other people also looking out for you. More importantly, God's got your back. So let's get rolling this evening. I want to mention today's the 15th. So the National Hurricane Center has introduced their first outlook, and they're saying, hey, no new tropical cyclones are expected during the next 5 days. So they're not concerned about this as of yet, but this only goes out 5 days. And really, the model, which is the GFS, that's been showing the worst case scenario with this, the most aggressive outlier kind of situation, really doesn't get going until about 6 or 7 days out from today. So, obviously it's not going to show anything, and plus confidence is very low. But let's talk about what we know. So let's look at the GFS. We're going to show you the European. We're not just going to show you the model that just shows the most aggressive scenario. We're going to show you all these models. We're going to show you the European, the Canadian, the latest long-range icon, some ensembles, and then we're going to talk about what's steering this and just get a little bit more detailed for you guys. So stay tuned if you really want to know the nitty-gritty information on what could potentially happen. So here's the GFS. We're going to start this off by Friday morning. In fact, no, let's back it up to about, Wednesday evening. Keep your eyes down here. Something called CAG, Central American Gyrum. So basically, it's a bunch of showers and storms, a bunch of energy right here off Central America that sometimes can drift to the Pacific side. Sometimes it can drift to the Atlantic side, to the Caribbean. So, when it gets into the Caribbean, then it's dealing with some warm waters of the Western Atlantic and can drift into the Gulf of Mexico, depending on what steering currents are. So the GFS, this is what the latest one wants to show. It gets going, getting into Thursday, getting into Friday morning, pops off a low pressure right here, if you keep your eyes right here. And then it kind of gets over land over Central America, and then it re-energizes and starts to head towards the Yucatan for Saturday morning. So this is about a little over 6 days out. It starts to strengthen in this area where there's warmer water. Temperatures are probably in the low to mid 80s in sea surface temperatures. It starts to strengthen, makes landfall. It's probably a tropical storm, maybe a low-end hurricane. Category 1 hurricane makes landfall in the Yucatan, and then it gets off the Yucatan, and we're getting into early next week, gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and then tries to strengthen. But I tell you, the latest GFS is a little bit more realistic. It doesn't show some aggressive hurricane in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. It does have a pretty aggressive scenario pretty early on in its life, like around this time next weekend. But in general, this has actually trended towards the more conservative models. Basically, the GFS is an outlier, and it's an aggressive outlier. But I tell you what, it's been the first one to pick up on the possibility of tropical development. So this is what the GFS shows, the latest one. Now I will tell you, the latest GFS has actually backed off a little bit and has pushed this a little bit more west. But it's just one model run, it really is. Look at the European, we'll obviously get a little bit further down here, and we'll start this off by early this week. Keep your eyes down here. All you're going to see is probably a bunch of green. And really, that's all it is. You're getting into midweek, late work week, getting into Friday now. And, it looks like it really the latest operational run, not an ensemble run, really wants to put most of the convection and whatever energy there is on Central America or either flat out on the Pacific side. It doesn't get anything going in the Caribbean. I mean, nothing. So, and there it is. There's a low pressure that pops off a Sunday morning, so about 7 days away, and then it just kind of drifts away and doesn't do anything. It just kind of rides Central America, then gets into Mexico. Now you look at the Operation Canadian model, and it sides with the European. We're getting into late week, getting into Thursday, getting into Friday. And here it is. You see how there's a circle of an isobar right here. That's symbolizing there is your low pressure. So the Canadian develops this, but it develops it on the Pacific side of Central America. Nothing on the east side like the GFS. So this is for about Friday evening, and it actually strengthens it very briefly, but really it doesn't end up being anything, and then it just kind of meanders early next week. I'm talking about like 9-10 days out, not this coming week, and tries to strengthen it and just does its thing, gets out in the Pacific, no threat to the U.S. whatsoever. Now the icon is kind of somewhere in the middle. This is the latest long-range icon. We're getting into late work week, getting into Thursday, Friday, and here it is right into here. Pops off a low pressure right here, late kind of, in overnight hours of Saturday and the Sunday of next weekend. And it just has a low pressure over Central America. It doesn't get it over land either way. And like I said, nothing over the Western Atlantic. So the GFS is really the outlier right here. You look at the GEFS ensembles, the latest ones coming out right now. And in general, they haven't really shifted at all. This goes all the way out to Saturday afternoon next weekend. And really, I don't see any big-time changes with it. If anything, it's kind of consolidating in this area. But just because it's an ensemble and it's more reliable technically, it's still, as a whole, the ensembles and the operation run of the GFS and its ensembles, it's still an outlier, meaning, it's the scenario that's uncommon, basically, right now. So, right now, it's hard to, put a lot of cards on the GFS happening. But I will tell you, the GFS has done rather well the last 2 years. It has, but it's all on its own right now. It really is. And a lot of people aren't confident that this is going to happen. Now, I want to show you this is what you call the Spaghettios. It's on Weather Models, which is a paid subscription weather site. So if you watching this area, and I probably could find a way, but I know this screen's a little bit smaller. But if you keep your eyes right in this area, you'll see individual circles starting to pop up. And this is where it's trying to predict where a low pressure could pop up. Remember, these are ensembles, so there's multiple runs all put together in one. So it's trying to tell you, hey, there's only a few runs, and here they are. And this is getting into overnight next Sunday, basically 7 days out. It's showing, hey, there's a couple circles right here where you got a 1,000 to 1,005 millibar low pressure, maybe a sub-1,000 millibar low that sneaks into the central Gulf of Mexico and maybe threatens the Gulf Coast. But I know this looks like a lot of circles, and it kind of is, but compared to how many ensemble runs there are, it's not really a lot, and it's really sloppy. It's very broad, and in general, there's just not a lot of support. And, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of things, there's not a lot of support in general that anything will develop based off the European and its ensembles. But if it does have it more sneaking into the Gulf of Mexico as opposed to the eastern side. But the European just doesn't like the idea of anything developing whatsoever. So now that you've seen all that, let's talk about the environmental factors that could go into steering this and strengthening this and so forth. So sea surface temperatures is the easiest one. So this shows in Celsius. So, I know you're thinking, well, can you show me Fahrenheit? Because that's what I know. But just think, if you see 29, 28 degrees Celsius, that's equivalent to about the low to mid 80s in Fahrenheit. So, that's, 82, 83 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you don't have super, super warm waters right here in the Caribbean, but you have waters that could sustain tropical development. Any kind of rapid intensification? Highly doubt it. And you got a nice finger of warmer waters going into the Gulf of Mexico, which is starting to heat up. But in general, you got warm enough temperatures for tropical development here. But, massive intensification, I doubt it. But you got to watch this for sure. So we got that. Now I want to show you one thing. Where does this develop? So the GFS, this is the GFS. This likes this CAG, basically think of this as a big blob of energy around Thursday to anywhere between Thursday and Friday, anywhere between actually Thursday of Saturday of this coming week, well, of this week. Where does this blob of convection initialize? Basically, where does it develop? Does it develop kind of over Central America? Does it develop kind of on the eastern side of Central America? Does it form on the western side of Central America, right on top of this area of Central America? So that's a big question here. The more further it develops kind of to the eastern side, the higher chance that, hey, it could maybe potentially take more of a GFS route, not necessarily a full-fledged GFS crazy getting into the Gulf of Mexico and strengthening into a hurricane and hitting Florida. Not saying that, but in general, we watch to see where this develops. And that is going to be, a big factor on where this steers. So what is steering this thing? So I know we get into this and you're thinking, well, I don't know what I'm looking at all. Well, it's really simple. It's no point in making this super complex. Basically, the red or the orange you see, whatever color you want to call this, that is ridging. The blue, which you see way up here, that is troughing or either some kind of low pressure. And that is why the GFS has this big blob of blue right here, because it's saying, around Saturday afternoon, a low pressure could be formed, just southeast of the Yucatan, heading towards the Yucatan. Now, the reason you don't see this further over here is because this ridge of high pressure, steering currents take it like this. They kind of wrap around this high pressure like this. There could be in little embedded areas of a high pressure where steering currents are different. But anyways, just focus on the idea that you're never going to have a tropical system plowing right into a high pressure unless it's trapped, which happens sometimes. It does. Basically where it just has nowhere to go and it basically stalls out. The steering currents become stationary. But in general, you look at this low pressure right here and you have ridging to its north, even though it's light ridging, very light ridging, and you have ridging to the east a little bit and northeast. And depending on where this is at, depends on where this forms and where it goes. So the GFS has it kind of circling around this ridging. It's really light in this region. And basically, the stronger these systems are, not always, but the stronger these systems are, normally the idea is that they can kind of hold their own a little bit more as far as steering currents. They can kind of steer themselves a little bit more into lighter ridging. But in general, the GFS likes the idea of this ridging pretty much going away. So therefore, this tropical system actually gets picked up by troughing. And, low pressures, tropical systems get pushed away by troughing, or sometimes an upper level low can form, which I believe this is what this will likely be here in the south central U.S. And sometimes they get picked up by them, which it does not on the latest GFS because it weakens really into nothing. But let's back it up to right here, which is 144 hours out, which is next Saturday afternoon. You see this ridging right here? Well, we'll look at the same thing per the euro. First off, you don't really see anything, do you? It's not there. Well, that's because you have ridging pushing further southwest towards Central America. Therefore, it keeps anything that tries to develop over Central America. Therefore, it doesn't develop because it's over land. So you can't get any development if you don't have water, right? So that's why the European is having this develop over Central America, is because you have deeper ridging shooting to the southwest, and it's pushing whatever energy forms and it's keeping it over Central America. Same thing with the Canadian. It's light ridging, but when you have a weaker storm, light ridging is going to steer something wherever it wants. So in general, even though you have light ridging right here, steering currents are weak. It doesn't allow really anything to get going here into basically the Western Atlantic and the Caribbean. So it's very interesting to watch here. And another thing is even if this thing does get going, how much shear is it going to run into if it does somehow sneak into the Gulf of Mexico 8-9 days out from today? I think it will be dealing with a lot of shear. And in fact, I think the latest GFS does a really good job of showing how the shear basically disrupts the storm, even if it does get into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, with a much weaker scenario than it has been showing over the last few runs. So I hope that made sense. If you got any questions, let me know. And there's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of in-depth stuff when it comes to tropical systems. I don't feel like it's as in-depth as a severe weather season, but it's a little bit more better. It's a little bit easier to understand than I feel like than severe weather setups. But it's going to be interesting going forward trying to figure this one out. So stay tuned for the morning. We'll talk about the severe weather setup for the eastern U.S. God bless all y'all. Have a great end of your weekend.